is revelation.
Hey everyone, welcome to today's episode. It's Friday, February 20th. Happy Friday. So let's get into the headlines. Top stories today. Well, food production is national security. People are up in arms about glyphosate production. Glyphosate production has never been phased out, so people should stop worrying about the fact that it's existing. It does exist, and although I despise it as a product, I'm no fan of glyphosate, but the farmers were asked, what do we need a lot of to make food production quickly, to accelerate food production in case of an emergency? And the farmers said, well, we need phosphorus, which is a chemical fertilizer, and we need glyphosate for weed remediation. So I'm no fan of glyphosate, but people have to understand what this executive order is and why it's being pumped out in the media, specifically concentrating on glyphosate and not phosphorus, which is the real issue here. So also in the news, we got a win in Virginia. The election integrity undermining the redistricting there that the ex-CIA agent was planning and the Democrats were planning there in Virginia has been there. A judge issued a temporary stay there. So that's a slight victory. Hopefully that'll hold until the midterms. Until the midterms. Excuse me there. Until the midterms. Funny. Appreciate you joining me today. Don't forget to engage the channel, like, subscribe, leave a comment, share this episode. All right, without further ado, let's read the news. We're going to start with the word of the day here, velvet glove. Superficial gentleness and courtesy masking a strong, unyielding will or determination. And the reason I bring this up is because of what I've been talking about surrounding what's happening with this executive order upheaval, I guess. For all you suburban moms out there that are concerned with health, glyphosate, you shouldn't eat glyphosate. You shouldn't eat regularly processed, particularly vegetables, leafy green vegetables that have been subject to the spraying of herbicide like glyphosate. You should eat organically. I would tell everybody to eat organically because of this, but you're not going to stop the U.S. government or the private big agra to stop using herbicide. They're not going to pay illegal immigrants out there to pick weeds. That's not what they're going to do. So although I disagree with the use of this herbicide, I do believe there should be legislation. However, what I'm talking about here is worse, because the Democrats, and I don't want to get too long-winded here, but the Democrats didn't do anything about glyphosate. They didn't do anything. And what I'm trying to say here is politics is about choices. You might not like the choices, but you have to make a choice. It's not about ideals, right? The know-nothings don't understand the difference between an ideal and governance. Governance and even elections and electing somebody in a representative government is about choices. You can't pick somebody who represents policies that isn't on the ballot. So you would prefer Kamala Harris? Would Kamala Harris have done anything about glyphosate? The Democrats do anything about glyphosate? I don't think so. So people have to understand that and concentrate on the fact that ramping up domestic production of phosphorus is the point of the executive order. All right, let's move on to the news. CNBC, Kennedy defends Trump glyphosate order. MAHA erupts as midterm approaches. Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. defended President Donald Trump's executive order spurring the domestic production of glyphosate. And I keep saying glyphosate. I've been saying it wrong for years. It's glyphosate. And I don't have any problem with this. The goal, the ideal really should be education. And then it'll work itself out, right? So if nobody buys food that's sprayed with glyphosate, then those food production companies aren't going to make money, et cetera, et cetera. I eat organically, especially vegetables, as much as I can. I try not to eat regularly produced vegetables. I mean, I do. I don't think it's right, but that's what you're faced with. Should it be outlawed? I guess, but that takes legislation, right? That has nothing to do with the president can't say no more, he can't outlaw things with an executive order. You can increase production of something, but you can't prohibit something with an executive order. You can lessen legal remedies and so forth and so on, but I don't want to get too much into that. But you see how CNBC here presents Kennedy defends Trump glyphosate order. MAHA erupts as midterm approaches. This is politically divisive because they knew that MAHA represents a contingent of usually Democratic suburban moms that are worried about the poison in the food supply. And it's not just in the food supply, but a lot of the problems with these people, I don't like glyphosate in my kid's food, but yet they're taking antidepressants or letting their kids get on antidepressants. It's a holistic approach to eliminating toxins from your environment, from your food supply, from your water. I mean, if you're drinking tap water and you're worried about glyphosate, stop drinking tap water. The other, some good news here, and just briefly, I want to touch on the latest GDP numbers. Don't be fooled by those either. They say fourth quarter was 3%. We already had upgraded growth numbers there that were approaching 5%. And so now they're downgraded by another release of information. I hold my breath. Again, politics is about choices. Whether or not you believe that this person is going to do better than that person. It's not an ideal. And what is bothering me is that people are holding up Trump to an ideal. Supporters of Trump are holding up Trump to an ideal, whether or not he's doing this or that and the other thing. Governing the most powerful nation in the world, has its pitfalls, obviously. And sometimes it's not as easy as it sounds. You just need to make decisions. Well, you have to take things into consideration when you're making those decisions, obviously, and we're dealing with a corporate fascist oligarchy. So if you don't think the corporations band together to try to legally lobby, but they also have other means to put pressure on representative government. So it's not that that's not going to go away. And we have to think about what's going to happen after Trump. I keep saying this over and over again, and my calls are going to get louder, that Trump's former supporters, now detractors, the grass is always greener. If you're thinking Kamala Harris would have done better, I don't think so. You think Gavin Newsom is going to do better? AOC? Is Hillary Clinton? Is Hillary Clinton going to outlaw glyphosate? Glyphosate? No. But there is some support that's holding strong. Fox News has the headline, Grandmother urges voters to abandon party loyalty after defending Trump at Black History Month event. Alicia Cook told critics to back off Trump and let him do his job. She also went on to say that the grandmother who passionately defended Trump against racism charges at a Black History Month event shared a message for residents of Democrat-run cities plagued by crime. Stop voting for parties, she said. Vote for causes. Vote for those who you see are making changes, the right changes that are keeping us safe. She went on to say, I love him. I don't want to hear nothing you got to say about that racist stuff. She said, don't be looking at me on the news, hating on me because I'm standing up for somebody that deserves to be stand up for. She meant stood up for. Get off the man's back. Let him do his job. He's doing the right thing. The thing that Trump is a racist, I don't think Trump's a racist, but they play that card. It's the Nazi, it's the racist, it's the white supremacy. There's nothing there, right? There's nothing there. Is he as multi-culty as you would like him to be? I don't know. I don't see anything racist from him. So that's just the way I stand. And the fact that he has black people that have been supporting him his whole life doesn't lead me to believe that he's racist. The reason that he gets that moniker from people on the left is because of his stance on illegal immigration, which doesn't have anything to do about race. It has to do with what type of people come here illegally and why should they get a chance to stay? They shouldn't. And also a lenient position, a lenient policy on illegal immigration just encourages more illegal immigration. And of course, and if you look at the left, they constantly conflate legal immigration with illegal immigration and try to make it the xenophobic trope, which really doesn't have any legs to stand on. The Post-Millennial, article number 4, Westmore passes law banning Maryland law enforcement from partnering with ICE. In Maryland, we defend constitutional rights and constitutional policing. I don't even know what that means. What does that mean? Constitutional rights and constitutional policing. Illegal immigrants have no constitutional rights to be in the country. I don't know what people keep invoking the Constitution, and they keep confusing the Fourth Amendment with unlawful search and seizure with being able to detain, arrest people that are in the country illegally. The real question is whether you need a warrant to enter someone's house for an arrest. And it's an arrest warrant. It's not a search warrant. So when you detain people, you're allowed to search them to make sure that they're not going to be a threat. People don't understand the powers the police have. Like them or not, they are imbued with certain powers that normal citizens don't have. And you have to understand that. Like, another citizen doesn't have the right to detain you or arrest you. That's kidnapping. Normal citizen doesn't have the right to shoot you if you pose a threat or you're not brandishing a deadly threat, a weapon of some sort. And even then, people don't understand the police have the right to do so, right? So if you're resisting arrest and you get shot by police, well, you were resisting arrest. Should people resisting arrest get shot? No. Should people fleeing police get shot? No. But it could happen. So why would you resist arrest? Why would you flee police? You shouldn't. Oh, well, it's very nice if your parents or your loved ones can sue the police department after you're shot to death, but wouldn't it be better if you just weren't shot to death? I don't have the right to shoot people. And it's not, I don't have some reverence, some unbalanced reverence for the police. I said this yesterday. I've been behind bars. I know what it's like. But I'd rather not break the law. I'd certainly not like to get caught. Most criminals don't like to get caught if you're breaking the law. But you have to know the law and know what your rights are to be able to fend off the police. If they're in the wrong. If the police are within their rights and what they can do, they're not wrong. So Wes Moore goes on with this: we will not allow untrained, unqualified, unaccountable ICE agents to deputize our law enforcement officers. They're not going to deputize your law enforcement officers. What your correctional facilities and the law enforcement are supposed to do is when they receive a person in custody where they're a little name on a list called a retainer, that if you have that person in police custody, you need to hold them until ICE comes and takes them into custody. That's what we're talking about here. We're not deputizing, the federal agents are not deputizing law enforcement. But when people, citizens or otherwise, are protesting, activists are protesting and interfering with law enforcement operations, obstructing, that's a crime. And it's the job of the local police to arrest those people who are obstructing federal law enforcement officers, however you characterize them, untrained, unqualified, or unaccountable ICE agents. It doesn't fucking matter. He's a federal agent. So if one of your citizens in your municipality is interfering with a federal agent conducting legitimate law enforcement duties, then it's your job to arrest those people. Period. They're not asking you to assist in the apprehension of illegal immigrants. Only in the context of transferring them from your jail into the custody of ICE or Department of Homeland Security. We only have about 24 articles to get through today, so excuse me for my long-winded response. It's shit like that. It's an ICE thing. It's everything that's talked about passionately by the left is not based in any legal authority. It's just your opinion. You don't like the federal law enforcement rounding up people that are here illegally. You don't like that, and so you want to get in their way. That's really against the law. It's obstruction. That just makes me mad because you have other ways to change things, which is the way our system is set up is to debate. Write your congressman, try to change the law. We haven't had immigration reform because the Democrats just want to let everybody in. And you're not going to get a consensus there. You want amnesty? Well, we got to close the border and get rid of all the illegal alien criminals before we're going to talk about amnesty. So you should want to applaud getting rid of criminal illegal aliens, because the faster we do that, the faster we can have the debate over amnesty for the people that are here and living peacefully. More insanity. The post-millennial, a student struck by car injured during Florida anti-ICE walkout. The student was taken to a local hospital with non-life-threatening injuries. A minor participating in an anti-ICE walkout on Monday afternoon was brought to a hospital after being struck by a vehicle because they're walking in the fucking street. An incident occurred on North Military Trail around 12:30 p.m. near West Palm Beach, Florida's Palm Beach Lakes High School. Goes on to say, our focus, the people from the school said, our focus remains on educating students and protecting instructional time. We appreciate the community's partnership in keeping our schools safe and focusing on learning. How do you allow your kids, your students to walk out of friggin' school and then walk in the street? If you have a protest where you're going to march, and that means march in the street, that means to obstruct traffic, et cetera, you need to get a permit. You can't just block streets. It's illegal to do, even in Florida. If you want to walk on the sidewalk or whatever with your sign and a bullhorn, As long as you don't impede the right of way of other people walking on the sidewalk, you're good. But obviously, this kid was in the street and got hit by a car because kids don't know better. That's the issue with minors. They don't know better. And to be honest with you, there are a lot of adults that don't know better either. All right, staying with illegal criminals here. Fox News. Organized South America crime group burglarizes over 60 high-end Houston area homes targeting designer goods. Crime network targets second-story windows and reposition security camera. So what they're doing here, they're very sophisticated. They use burner phones, so when they ping, it doesn't lead them to the target or the subject, the suspect. And they're using security camera jamming equipment. So most of these security camera, what it does is when it records movement, it uploads it to a cloud. You might know this or you might not know this from the Nancy Guthrie case. So that's the way most of it works. And besides, anything that goes on the internet, including your security cameras, can be hacked. That's why you shouldn't have these systems with the cameras inside, because anybody could hack into it and watch you. But in any case, most the stuff doesn't go to your phone. It goes to a cloud, and then your phone can access it from the cloud. So what they do is they jam the system from the electronic system, the Wi-Fi, whatever, that gets it to the internet, because it has to be, the cameras have to be connected to your router, et cetera, et cetera. So they jam the Wi-Fi, which prevents the video from being uploaded correctly. It gets corrupted up to the internet. So it's very sophisticated. Most of these folks, they're pretty intelligent, says Ratcliffe. He's the CIA guy. They're using burner phones. They're using other information that makes it very difficult to follow them. Last year, officers arrested Chilean national, so he's not a citizen. It's unclear whether he was here illegally. Castillo Contreras, in connection with one of the burglaries in which jewelry was stolen. So there are people, illegal or otherwise, foreign nationals in this country doing bad things. We're going to get to more of that in just a second. But first, article number 7. Post-millennial anti-ICE agitators shut down Portland City Council meeting in Antifa-affiliated mini-insurrection. 4 arrested. I thought Antifa didn't exist. The disruption was organized by anti-affiliated group Revoke ICE Permit PDX. These fucking people. Fighting the man. We have representative government in this country, so you don't have to fight the man. Yeah, the authoritarian government of the United States is so authoritarian. How? How is it authoritarian? Called police powers. Look it up. Federal government, state governments have police powers. It is the right to legislate through democracy, through your democratically elected leaders who democratically arrive at legislation and then democratically decide how that legislation will be enforced and create an enforcement agency to do the enforcement and fund that agency to do the enforcement. Let's just make laws and defund the organization that enforces it. It's so fucking retarded, and you call yourself Democrats. Anti-ICE agitators physically disrupted a Portland City Council meeting on Wednesday, resulting in 4 arrests. City officials described the incident as a mini-insurrection in which protesters, activists, engaged in extreme acts of intimidation against councilors as they demanded the city revoke the building permit for the Immigration and Customs Enforcement facility in South Portland. You see, you disrupt. That's great. But these meetings, have the right. You have the right to get up and stand and speak. You change the state through debate. You change the state through debate. You fight the state through debate. You don't fight the state with disruption. And these people were arrested, rightfully so. The disruption was organized on social media by anti-affiliated group Revoke ICE Permit PDX. Article number 8, Fox News. Cortez Masto admits Democrats have been weak on immigration, chides Biden administration on border security. Monday morning quarterbacking. Nevada senator says her party has been too afraid to talk about securing the border. They don't know what they're fucking doing. They don't have a clear legislative plan. They just want to demand what they want. And if they can't get it through demand and intimidation, they'll just flaunt the law. More on this story from the Federalist. There is no moderate solution to the extreme immigration problem the Democrats created. The New York Times Daily Podcast mistakenly interviewed a reasonable voter on immigration last week. So it looks like they've swung hard in the other direction by inviting self-described moderate Democrat Catherine Cortez Masto to balance things out with some old-fashioned anti-American insanity. The U.S. Senator from Nevada used the half-hour episode on Thursday to do what all Democrats in Congress do, which is to pretend to be interested in securing the border while attempting to complicate what it means to enforce immigration law. I don't need to chime in any further. I just did it for 10 minutes. So what I've been talking about with my colleagues, according to Masto, and this is where Democrats need to be aligned, is that we're not saying to completely defund ICE. Yeah, because they're not in power. Once they get in power, that's what they'll say. She said, apparently unaware that at least 5 of her Democratic colleagues in Congress have called to abolish ICE along with other elected Democratic officials. What we are saying is fund them to the level they traditionally were so that we're securing our borders. What they said in the Federalist headline there, which is that they created the problem. If they didn't let in 10 to 12 million illegal immigrants, we wouldn't have to overly fund ICE and Border Patrol. Fund them at traditional levels. Why didn't you, protect the border at traditional levels? And she goes on to say, and we're also working in our communities with local law enforcement to go after the violent criminals under immigration jurisdiction that they have. What? If they find out a criminal they arrest for illegal activity is in the country illegally, they're supposed to hold them and notify ICE. There's nothing to do with, you're supposed to arrest violent people and then keep them behind bars, period. That's not what they're doing. And I'll illustrate that at the end of the live stream. I wanted to dig up this video, though. This is story number 10. Fox News, Illinois Lieutenant Governor seeking U.S. Senate seat releases video of people saying, fuck Trump. They said it. We're all thinking it. Juliana Stratton wrote in a post on X. And then Tammy Duckworth was there also in the video saying, fuck Trump. And they were told by pollsters or by strategists to use more profanity to get mad about it. And so that's what they're doing. They're trying to use. And but the analysts and the strategists also told them to stop talking about defunding ICE, but they're doing that anyway because they're vulnerable on immigration. But fuck Trump. That's your platform. Fuck Trump. It's just so stupid. Platform is like try to make things more affordable by spending more money and raising inflation. No, that's not going to do it. Making your community safer by letting in criminal illegal aliens and not prosecuting petty criminals. It's just so dumb. They're dumb. You know why? Because the electorate is dumb. 80% of the electorate don't know who their local and federal representatives and senators are. They don't know. How is representative government supposed to work if the majority of the electorate doesn't know who their representatives are and can't hold them to account? Dumb. And so people are like, elect Democrats, and then they forget about it. Yay, we won. We elected a Democrat. You don't look at the voting record. You don't even look at the legislation. Speaking of legislation, this is going to be coming up in the Supreme Court. The Federalist Eileen Gu indicts birthright citizenship and our entire immigration orthodoxy. Gu embodies what our immigration orthodoxy promotes, an America where citizens of the world can enrich themselves with no loyalties attached, presumably to the United States. So if you didn't know who Gu was, well, I'll just get into this story here. Eileen Gu's mother, so Eileen Gu, first of all, is she's an Olympic skater. She's competing in the Winter Olympics. But she's American, but she's competing for communist China. That's all you really have to know there. And let me get into the story. So Eileen Gu's mother came to America for a better life. She got it. Yan Gu, the daughter of two Chinese government officials, emigrated to the U.S. in the 1980s, just a few decades after the passage of the Hart-Celler Act, which overhauled immigration policies and prompted a mass increase in arrivals from Asia and Latin America. Educated at Auburn University, Rockefeller University, and eventually Stanford Graduate School of Business, she dabbled as a ski instructor and apparently in venture capital. In 2003, she gave birth to a daughter in San Francisco, raising her in an affluent Bay Area neighborhood. What's known of Eileen Gu's childhood reads like a caricature of a coastal elitism, skiing in Lake Tahoe at age 3. Educated at a girls' school where this year's tuition costs upward of $48,000 per year. Presented at La Bal des Debutantes in Paris, groomed for Olympic stardom, and now studying at Stanford, modeling, skiing in the Olympics, and juggling multi-million-dollar brand deals. Right? They're not spied on because they're good party members, or they're good and defer to the Communist Party of China. In another case, a case of two kids, let's call it a case of two competitors of Chinese origin. PJ Media, U.S. gold medalist's father escaped Tiananmen, and the CCP spied on her. Alyssa Lee, American figure skater, stood on the Olympic podium and received a gold medal. Her achievement is a truly American dream, and even more so as her father came to America seeking refuge from murderous communist tyranny. Arthur Louis grew up in a little mountain village in the Chinese Sichuan province, according to the People's Magazine, in a family of 6 children. When he was 25 years old, he actively participated in the pro-democracy protests that culminated in the 1989 Tiananmen Square massacre. After that, Arthur managed to flee the country and the Chinese Communist Party tyranny for a new life in America. But decades later, the Louis family became targets of Chinese spying, with one foreign agent persistently persecuting them. And this is the one that won the gold medal, right? Gu didn't win the gold medal, but she had all, that's the difference, is whether you're for communism, how you're treated, and whether you're against communism, or specifically the Chinese Communist Party. Knowing her father's pro-freedom activism back in China, she understood why the CCP would go after him. As recently as October of last year, authorities charged Matthew Sybaris, who contacted Arthur Louis in 2021 with impersonating a United States customs official and trying to obtain the family's passport numbers. Sybaris later traveled to California to spy on the Lee family more directly and try to worm private information out of them. He aimed to pass on all such information onto his CCP spy masters. And he was, under Trump, arrested because Joe Biden didn't care about the Chinese communists spying on this country, i.e. the spy balloon that didn't transmit any information back to China. Of course not, according to the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, who is also apparently anti-American, because he wants to know what white hate is. What was it? White hate? Anyway, we have more news to get through today. Again, thanks for joining me. Don't forget to engage the channel, like, subscribe, leave a comment. I appreciate you. Back to the news. Article number 13, The Federalist. Democrats claim GOP gutted Medicaid. Federal data shows the opposite. Latest CBO report illustrates how Medicaid spending, like that of other federal health care programs, continues to grow even higher. And I have to say something about information. Is the way information is released, how it's handled, et cetera, et cetera. You have to understand what's happening there. Everything is to thwart Trump, just like in the first term. So they get numbers out, they skew the numbers. They get good news for the Trump administration. When good news comes out for the Trump administration, they try to tarnish it as much as possible and say, well, that doesn't really mean anything. That's not important to know. So, of course, the Republicans, they hate people. They don't want to have good government programs. They just want to eliminate, the Republicans want to try to eliminate fraud. They want to try to make it fair. So even if you're on the dole, shouldn't you be on the dole because you deserve it? And other people that are scamming that money, you're okay with that too? Most people are like, that are okay with corruption. It's like any way you can get a buck. Doesn't matter whether you deserve it or not. Not about personal responsibility, taking care of yourself. Now, if you can't take care of yourself and the state has to help you, okay. But there are people that are able-bodied that just, nah, I'm just going to see that on the internet all the time. People take videos of themselves. I ain't going to work. Give me my money. How do you have any feeling of self-worth? I just don't understand. Story number 14, just the news. Prosecutors zero in on CIA's Brennan with secret requests for years-old evidence from the U.S. Senate. Federal prosecutors are probing the weaponization of intelligence and law enforcement against Donald Trump, and his allies have sent a secret and rare request for evidence from the U.S. Senate regarding former CIA Director John Brennan, signaling that they are zeroing in on his questionable testimony going back nearly a decade on his now debunked efforts to tie President Donald Trump's 2016 campaign to collusion with Russia. All this is illegal. And if you know how the corporate fascist oligarchy works, if you're being controlled, if you work for the federal government or government and being controlled by others, you have to worry. And if you're putting your idealistic zeal and not following the law, I mean, all these people should be put in jail. Hillary Clinton clearly defied the law by destroying subpoenaed evidence. And John Brennan, more than likely, as James Comey did, if you're leaking classified information, just because you leak it through your lawyer friend doesn't make it okay. The fact that those cases were dismissed is eye-opening. But it's just like the Jeffrey Epstein thing. You have to understand is that the conspiracy is everywhere. And they say it's not really a Democrat conspiracy, although the people within the conspiracy lean left because of the agenda. They want the agenda to be more socialist. But that's not it. The conspiracy is all these people are working towards the same want. And that want eventually leads to you surrendering your freedom and liberties. Even though they sit there and, like Wes Moore says, it's so unconstitutional that ICE is rounding up illegal aliens. Isn't that their charge? In any case, moving on, the House Judiciary Committee last year formally referred Brennan, who oversaw the Obama-era CIA, for prosecution, alleging he gave false testimony in 2023 about his role in trying to bring the discredited Steele dossier into the intelligence assessment that suggested Russia tried to help Trump beat Hillary Clinton. It's so not true. Russia wanted to know from the Trump administration, is there going to be sanction relief? That's what they wanted to know. That's it. And, if there is, we would support you over Hillary Clinton, because Hillary Clinton's belligerent talk about Russia was not comforting to Russia whatsoever. When she wanted to create a no-fly zone over Syria that would directly put U.S. fighter aircraft engaging Russian aircraft, that was a very bad idea and very belligerent. Bellicose, maybe even. Goes on to say that testimony is still covered by the 5-year statute of limitations for prosecuting false testimony in Congress, and he should be prosecuted. I mean, doing what's right and what's wrong. Speaking of doing what's right, Washington Times, article number 15, FBI warns of 764 predators using extortion, live stream self-harm to control child victims. This is not much different than what Epstein was doing. It's just on a different scale and targeting children. It's all mind control. I mean, using extortion and getting people to do things that they wouldn't normally do, to use that against them later, to control them, to get them to do what you want them to do, whether it's to pass on classified information, or to give you money, or to help you in your evil experiments, whatever. Bureau issues alert over nihilistic violent extremists exploiting kids through social media gaming platforms. This is not a far cry from what Epstein was doing. And don't forget that Epstein, and we're going to get to a little more on him in just a minute, he's a limited hangout. The same reason why he's being prosecuted and Prince Andrew is being prosecuted is because they liked not young girls, but young women. So teenagers, but are young adults that can be considered young adults. That's the limited hangout that is trying to obscure the real heinous acts of people's sexual proclivity for young children, and then torture and abuse of them. That's what they don't want you to see. The FBI is investigating more than 350 individuals nationwide tied to violent online network dubbed 764 that target children and vulnerable people across the United States. And New England victims are allegedly pressured into self-harm, sexual exploitation, and other degrading acts. The Bureau's Boston division warned Thursday, because it's extortion. The same thing what Jeffrey Epstein did with hidden cameras is film yourself doing lewd acts, and then they have control over you, because then they get the video, and then they say, well, if you don't want this to become public, you do XYZ for me. Do more. And usually what they do with children is film yourself in more sexual acts. Otherwise, I will release this. And usually they do that by catfishing. They pretend to be somebody else who they're not, and exploit children. Children shouldn't be on the internet unsupervised anyway. I mean, kids under 15. Article number 16, Secretary Wright sends message to International Energy Agency, clean up your act, or the U.S. is out. I sure friggin' hope so. Energy Secretary Chris Wright blasted the agency for forecasting future oil demand in line with aspirations for net zero global emissions. Again, we're at net zero, this bullshit. On Tuesday, Wright said that the U.S. is definitely not satisfied, and again threatened to withdraw from the IEA if they didn't reform their practices. Like I said, they're not going away from the New World Order agenda, the net zero emissions. It's going to come back with full force. And I'm telling you, there's going to be things, they're going to try this reconciliation shit. There's going to be retribution. They're going to come after MAGA, anybody who's a conservative populist. And that's why a lot of establishment Republicans are saying, no, it's not me. I just supported Trump because I felt threatened. Also in line with what we're talking about, the Washington Post, if brain rot is real, how too much time online can affect your mind. I should have really paired this up with the other article from the Washington Times with kids online too much. But this, you might already know this, but I put this in here because using electronics and the internet can be beneficial if used for specific purposes in short doses. But if you spend your whole day scrolling, you're fucked up. Sorry. It's slang to describe the idea that being very online is harming our brains. It also describes the feeling of coming up for air after spending too many hours scrolling through low-quality social media content, or to describe the content itself. Brain rot could be a noun or a verb or even an adjective, depending on how brain rotted you are. There's a kernel of important truth in what sounds like a silly term, says an author who penned this book, How to Break Up with Your Phone, which I tell people all the time, if you're listening, shut off your phone, leave it on the charger, put it in a drawer, go touch grass, which is just a metaphor for going outside, talking with people. Don't be glued to the Pavlovian response of your phone dinging and beeping and lighting up and getting likes and getting comments and all that shit. I mean, I'd like the channel to be successful, but I don't fucking care that much. I'd like people to digest the information I'm providing. That's the most important part, because an educated electorate is better for democracy. Because most people don't know, they can't debate legislation. New York Post article number 18, Jeffrey Epstein's estate agrees to a measly $35 million settlement in victims' class action suit. Jeffrey Epstein's estate has agreed to pay as much as $35 million to resolve a class action lawsuit that accused two of the disgraced financiers. Why do they call him a financier? His advisors of aiding and abetting the sex trafficking of young women and teenage girls. Also, you have to understand that banks were involved. Banks knew of what the guy was doing, and they were still involved, lending him money and so forth and so on. The deal, if approved by a judge, would bring to an end a 2024 lawsuit filed against Epstein's former personal lawyer, Darren Indyke, and former accountant, Richard Kahn, who are co-executors of Epstein's estate. Well, I hope at least the victims get some money. I mean, don't forget that the young girls that Epstein got to work for him, they were getting paid. Whether they were kidnapped or not, apparently they were leave under their free will. It's kind of hard to get yourself off a private island, but you know what I mean. And they really, as a young adult, and that's the thing with U.S. law too, as a young adult, if you're over 16, you can enter in employment contracts with people. It's technically what that was. But it was obviously exploitive. I'm not making excuses for it. It's different than trafficking young children under the age of 16 for sex. And that's what they're trying to obscure. That nature of sexual proclivity of deviance. It's the last one. New York Post, eagle-eyed cop nabs New York City Transit terrors in just 24 hours only to see them released without bail. The problem with this is state bail reform laws bar judges from setting bail on non-violent crimes like pickpockets and whatnot. That's not law enforcement. And if you looked at the story, some of these guys had long rap sheets, arrested 50, 100. Some of these people, thousands of times they've been arrested. And the judge doesn't get to look at prior arrests. I mean, it's just ridiculous. 3 strikes, you're out. You know, even if they're petty crimes, if you're arrested for the same petty crime you've been arrested for before, you should go to jail. No bail, no nothing. Punishment is what deters crime. You're not punishing the criminal, then you're not deterring crime. And the stats speak for themselves. Zero Hedge. German court orders X to hand over data to NGOs searching for election disinformation or foreign interference. Well, this is kind of ridiculous because the issue here is that X has nothing to do with none of that. Disinformation or foreign interference, it's free speech. You should be able to decide for yourself what you consider disinformation or foreign interference. And how is X going to affect election law? It's so, the censorship is so out there. The BND is one of the worst intelligence services agencies in the world. They're the worst. And I am half German. My lineage is half German. But Jesus, you can't let these people off the leash for a second. They don't have a U.S. Constitution, so what they're doing is not against the law, but X is a social media platform. What the fuck does that have to do with election? It doesn't have anything to do with foreign interference. It's so bizarre. But there is serious stuff out there. One American News ousted former South Korean President Yoon Suk Yeol, sentenced to life in prison. And what did he do that was so awful? Yoon denied all the charges and reiterated at the time he had lawful authority to declare martial law to draw attention to opposition parties' obstruction of government and to root out pro-North Korean anti-state forces, in other words, communists. And they're replete in South. They've been infiltrated just like the communists have infiltrated here. Yoon, on the other stated reasons in the past, also centered on protecting South Korea's democracy from communism and rigged elections, national security from what he described as several internal threats. In Yoon's televised announcement that night, he stated that he was declaring emergency martial law to protect the Free Republic of Korea from the threat of North Korean communist forces, infiltrators, you know, not soldiers coming across the border, 38th parallel. Eradicate shameless or despicable pro-North Korean anti-state forces who are allegedly pillaging citizens' freedoms and happiness. I don't deny that. And restore the safeguard for the constitutional democratic order against forces seeking to overthrow the system. Just like they're trying to do here. But it's 5th generational warfare. It's not tanks and guns. They just have people saying, you know what? Conservatives, nationalists, Christians are bad. They're Nazis. White supremacy. The same shit we're doing here. It's using 5th generational warfare techniques to undermining existing democracy so those people that purport those policies aren't elected. And so you're never going to get a government that's concerned with individual liberties and protecting those liberties. Instead, you're going to give up your deference to the group, the socialist state, you know, which is for the people. Don't forget, Chinese Communist Party is for the people. Except for maybe the 90 million they killed. Not those people, but the other people they're for. People's Liberation Army, right? People are so easily fooled. All it takes is a euphemism. It's the Inflation Reduction Act. Zero hedge, article number 22. The ECB, that's a European Central Bank, quietly prepares global liquidity backstop as Euro debt wave builds. If you don't know what this is, central banks typically resort to this monetary policy instrument during phases of acute liquidity stress, debt service. Most recently, during the COVID lockdowns, of course, they borrowed tons of money, just like we did here. The repo facility counts among the central bank's immediate crisis tools. The so-called EUREP, Eurosystem Repo Facility for Central Banks, was launched on June 25th, 2020 as a short-term liquidity solution for associated central banks. The Central Bank of Kosovo drew 100 million euro, Montenegro 250 million euro in a short-term liquidity assistance. But now it's not going to be those fledgling governments. It's going to be the big players, because they go on to say the drastic expansion of sovereign debt within the Eurozone system may explain why concerns are deepening at the ECB tower. If the two pillars, Germany and France, are each calculating net new borrowing of 5% this year alone, pay attention. This generates palpable upward pressures on interest rates at the same time. Investors are asking how strongly the credit worthiness of individual Euro states ultimately depends on Germany's ability to service the mounting debt, a pressure that is manifesting itself in the markets. And just relating to what we're dealing with here in the U.S. is the same thing. Our debt service is $1 trillion a year. That's about the size of the Pentagon budget. All right, one last story here. The Telegraph, this blood-curdling film warns us about the future of mankind. Ignore it at your peril. And it's basically about a time traveler from 50 years hence trying to prevent an AI apocalypse. And good luck, have fun, don't die. So that, if you don't know anything about that movie, it's a new movie coming out. It's another one. It's just like they most are, is they're trying to get you to understand, believe, and help bring about a dystopian future. Not really to warn you. Have there been any happy future movies? Utopian? It's all dystopian garbage. Thanks for joining me today. Don't forget to engage the channel, like, subscribe, leave a comment, share the podcast. Just under an hour, 23, 24 stories. Wasn't a big news day. It was a really quiet news day. Happy Friday. Have a great weekend. Remember, you're under attack psychologically and biologically. Don't let that get to you. Just fight it. Join me every day, Monday through Friday. Live stream here on Rumble, YouTube, etc., etc. X. Now they figured out how to get it up. Get the live stream up on X again. And don't pay attention to what they're trying to tell you. Figure it out for yourself. And don't succumb to a dystopian future. Let's try to save our future and our kids' future. Glyphosate or no glyphosate. Eat organically, and you don't have to worry about it. The best thing to do is educate people about government, what you want the government to do, what they can do, and if they have any power to fight against chemical companies. But don't forget, the main part of that EO is phosphorus. It's creating majority of chemical fertilizer here in the United States, and the reason for that EO is the majority of chemical fertilizer is produced abroad. Okay? That's the point. Who gives a shit about glyphosate? I mean, I give a shit about it. I'm not going to eat it. Whether it should be on the food or not, I would take that up with the grower. Appreciate you. Thanks for joining me today. I'll see you Monday. Respect.
The New World Order.
This is all a conspiracy. No, you know that it's a conspiracy. I'm Donald Trump, and I approve this message.
You're crazy. You're crazy, man. You're crazy. I like you. But you're crazy.